Arthur's Family Truth. My name is Edward Caldwell. I'm 68 years old. I spent 35 years in construction and commercial real estate. I know when something doesn't add up. I was already inside the elevator when he stepped in front of the doors. He didn't touch me, just angled his body slightly enough to stop me without making it obvious. "Sir," he said quietly, "keep that bag with you tonight. Not be careful, not watch your things. That bag, the black canvas one under my arm." I looked at him for 3 seconds, not alarmed, not confused, just checking if he knew exactly what he was saying. He did, so I let the doors close. Didn't ask questions, didn't react. I just adjusted my grip on the bag and started running through a short list in my head. Who knew I was here? Who knew which room I'd be in? Who knew what I'd been carrying since I left my attorney's office that morning? That list wasn't long, and every name on it was family. I had dinner downstairs that evening, nothing special, steak, a glass of red, checked a few emails. I was back upstairs by 8:30. I stopped at the door to suite 1407 before I touched the handle. Old habit from years of walking job sites, you look before you step. Something about the way a space feels when it's been touched. Hard to explain if you've never had to develop the instinct, but after 35 years of watching project sites, you get a sense for when something's been moved. The room looked fine. Luggage stand in place, lamps on low, curtains at the 2/3 position housekeeping always uses, fruit basket on the writing desk, untouched. I walked in slowly, scanning left to right. Then I saw it. The black canvas bag was sitting on the luggage rack. I'd left it on the bed, on the left side closest to the window, same spot every time. Margaret used to tease me about habits like that. "You could find your gear in a blackout," she'd say. She wasn't wrong, and she knew it wasn't neurotic, it was professional. When you've carried project files worth $2 million through construction sites, you develop systems. The bag being on the rack instead of the bed, that alone put me on alert. I set it on the writing desk and unzipped the main compartment. The legal folder was there. The laptop was there. The hard drive was there. I picked up the drive and turned it over. I have a habit I started back when I used to carry sensitive project contracts through job sites. Before any trip, I make a small diagonal scratch on the back of the drive with my thumbnail, thin line, 7 o'clock position. The kind of mark nobody notices unless they know exactly what they're looking for. The scratch was at the 5 o'clock position. I stood there for a moment looking at it. Someone had picked up that drive, turned it over, examined it, and set it back down. They didn't know about the mark. They didn't know I'd spent 35 years building systems precisely for moments like this. The documents were still inside the folder. Nothing removed, nothing visibly disturbed, but something was missing. All right, what was missing was the guarantee that I was the only person who'd had their hands on it. I put the drive back in the bag, zipped it, and went to the house phone at the end of the corridor. The security manager's name was Russell Kenmore. Broad guy, mid-50s, moved like someone who'd spent a long time handling situations that required calm over speed. He was at my door in under 5 minutes, with a younger colleague who waited in the corridor while Russell and I talked near the window. I told him exactly what I'd observed: the bag position, the hard drive, the scratch mark. I didn't tell him what I thought it meant. That wasn't his job. His job was the facts, and I gave him the facts straight. He listened without interrupting. Good sign. People who interrupt are still processing. People who stay quiet are already thinking about what to do next. "Our master override system logs every use," he said. "Every access is time-stamped and tied to a specific staff ID. If anyone entered this suite outside your key card, I'll have a name within the hour." He had it in 40 minutes. A front desk associate named Martin Prescott had used a manager-level override code to enter suite 1407 at 7:42 p.m. The exit timestamp was 8:09 p.m., 27 minutes inside my room while I was eating dinner 1 floor below. Martin had called in sick that morning. As of Thursday night, nobody at the hotel could reach him. Russell delivered this with the particular expression of a man who takes institutional security seriously and is quietly furious that his institution has been compromised. I respected that. Anger at the right things is a good quality in a person. "I'm filing a police report," he said. "I want you to know that." "Good. I'll provide a statement." I paused. "One more thing, security camera coverage of the lobby. Specifically the concierge station area. Tuesday evening around 7 p.m. He nodded slowly. "I can pull that footage. I'd like copies." I called Gloria from the room. She answered on the second ring, still at her office past 9 p.m., which tells you everything about Gloria Hartwell. She's been my attorney for 19 years. Sharp mind, terrible at finding her reading glasses, and absolutely no patience for people who waste her time. Someone was in my room, I said. No preamble. They had the hard drive in their hands. Brief silence. The kind that means she's thinking, not reacting. Are the documents intact? Yes. But Gloria, they knew which hotel. They knew the room number. They knew about the bag. Longer silence this time. The only people who knew about those documents are you, me, and my paralegal? I know. And the only people who knew you were staying at the Alderton this weekend? I know, I said again. She exhaled. I'm filing the trust restructuring first thing Monday morning. I was planning to wait for the full property valuation, but it's going in Monday. Early agreed, and Edward, don't tell Lorraine you're back until after it's filed. That one I didn't have to think about. I found Owen the next morning near the service elevator at the end of his shift. I didn't ambush him. I waited near the lobby until I saw him come through, then intercepted him the way you do when you need a conversation that doesn't attract attention. We sat near the hotel's side entrance, away from the main traffic. You warned me about the bag, I said. I need to know why. He was quiet for a moment. Then he told me straight. 2 days before I arrived, Tuesday evening, 2 men came into the lobby asking about suite availability on the 14th floor. Specific about which suite, they said they were arranging a surprise for someone. A man traveling alone, older. They used the name Caldwell. One was in his late 40s, silver-haired, expensive suit. The kind of man who expects to be accommodated without asking twice. The other was early 50s suit that cost money but didn't fit quite right. I knew who they were before Owen finished the description. Patrick Sullivan, my son-in-law, and almost certainly Stephen Merritt, the attorney Lorraine had mentioned once, in passing as someone who handles complicated family situations. I hadn't thought much about it at the time. I was thinking about it now. The front desk gave them nothing, standard policy. But they didn't leave. They stood near the concierge station for about 20 minutes. Owen watched them from across the lobby. The older one made a phone call and looked, as Owen put it, like he already had what he came for. The concierge station sits 12 feet from the guest services terminal, the system where key card requests are processed. 20 minutes of standing nearby is enough time to observe a lot of things you're not supposed to observe. You remembered all of this when you saw me check in. I said, you matched the description and the bag. I studied him for a moment. 28 years old, paying attention to things outside his job description because his instincts told him something was off. I was the same way at that age. My first foreman used to say that the best workers weren't the ones who did exactly what they were told. They were the ones who noticed what nobody told them to notice. I left Owen $100 and an old business card, didn't explain why. He nodded like he understood anyway. I called Howard Stratton from the hotel restaurant over a cup of coffee I barely touched. Howard is 62, retired federal investigator, now private. Gloria had used him twice. Thorough was how she described him. And he understands that some clients need results that will hold up in a courtroom. He answered on the first ring. I gave him the essentials, Patrick, Lorraine, the trust, the hotel room, the 2 men Owen described. I gave him Patrick's full name, the name Stephen Merritt, and what I knew about the law firm Lorraine had mentioned. I need the financial picture. I told him what they owe, to whom, and how urgent it is. Everything documented in a way a judge takes seriously. Timeline, he asked. Something meaningful before Monday morning. That's when my attorney files. Brief pause. That's tight. Can you do it? I'll start today. Howard called me Sunday morning at 8:47. I was already awake, sitting by the north-facing windows with coffee, watching the city do what cities do on Sunday mornings, unhurried, quiet in a way they never quite manage on other days. I need 90 minutes with you in person, he said. This afternoon, how bad is it? A pause. Not the uncertain kind, the kind where someone's deciding how much to say on a phone line. It's thorough, he said. They've been at this a while. We met at 2 p.m. in the hotel restaurant, corner table back of the room. Howard is 62, compact, the kind of face that doesn't offer much and doesn't need to. He carried a leather portfolio that looked unremarkable and contained, as I was about to find out, 14 months of someone else's desperation laid out in documented sequence. He sat down, ordered nothing, and opened the portfolio. I'll start with the money, he said. because everything else flows from it. Patrick Sullivan had launched a boutique hospitality investment venture 3 years ago with a business partner. The timing was bad, the leverage was excessive, and by 18 months ago the losses had reached $380,000. His partner exited clean. Patrick didn't. His personal accounts showed roughly $34,000 in liquid assets against $380,000 in obligations. Howard slid the credit report across the table, obtained through legal channels. He made a point of saying Lorraine had been covering him. $1,435,000 transferred from her accounts to Patrick's over the past 14 months. She'd liquidated a stock portfolio in October when Patrick's restructuring agreement expired, and the full debt came due. Her own position was nearly gone. I looked at the numbers without expression. I've been reading financials for 40 years. Numbers are honest in a way people rarely are. What the numbers said was simple. They'd burned through everything they had. It still wasn't enough, and they'd run out of their own money, so they'd moved on to mine. When did the legal planning start? I asked. Howard turned to the next section. 14 months ago, right around when the debt first came due, Patrick had consulted a firm called Dunbar and Mercer. They specialized in elder guardianship cases. Their billing records appeared in public court filings from a separate matter. Patrick's name was in the client index. Dunbar and Mercer had done 3 things Howard could document. First, they identified that my position as trustee of the Caldwell Trust could be legally challenged under state elder law statutes, but only if documented evidence of cognitive decline existed. Second, they connected Patrick with a Dr. Peter Ashford, a psychiatrist who had appeared as a paid expert witness in 11 guardianship hearings over 4 years. He had never once testified in favor of the person being evaluated. Not once in 11 cases. Third, they had drafted a petition for emergency guardianship naming me as the subject. It cited 3 specific incidents of alleged confusion. It was dated to be filed that Wednesday. Gloria was filing Monday at 8 a.m. They'd given themselves a 2-day buffer because they expected to have my documents photographed by Friday night. Once they knew what Gloria was preparing, they could decide whether to accelerate. The hard drive wasn't just valuable. It was the piece that told them whether they were running out of time. They didn't get it because they didn't know about the scratch. What are the 3 incidents? I asked. Howard checked his notes. First, I had allegedly gotten lost driving near an old commercial property I used to own, ending up parked outside for 20 minutes looking confused. Second, I had forgotten a family lunch, shown up an hour late, and seemed disoriented when Lorraine called to ask where I was. Third, I had become agitated and raised my voice at a restaurant when Patrick presented me with a business summary, and needed to be calmed down by Lorraine before other diners noticed. I remembered every one of those moments. Clearly, the first incident, I drive past that property every few months. I own the building next to it. I was checking on a drainage issue I'd noticed the previous week. I wasn't lost. I knew exactly where I was. Lorraine saw my car there and drew her own conclusions, or pretended to. The second, Lorraine changed the lunch location without telling me. I went to the original restaurant. She'd switched it to a place across town. By the time she called, I was already parked and waiting at the wrong address. That's not disorientation. That's a miscommunication she created. The third, Patrick handed me a 1-page summary showing projected returns on a property investment he was pitching. The numbers didn't add up. The cap rate calculation was wrong by a factor that would have meant losing money from day one. I pointed that out directly. He told me I was misreading it. I wasn't misreading it. I've calculated cap rates on commercial property since before Patrick Sullivan knew what a cap rate was. I wasn't agitated. I was right. 3 ordinary moments taken out of context, stripped of explanation, shaped into a narrative by people who knew exactly which words to put around them. That's what a carefully built case looks like. Before you get to examine it, Howard had one more item. He placed a photograph on the table, slightly grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough. A restaurant booth. Patrick on one side, on the other, Dr. Carolyn Brewer, former partner at my physician's practice until she left in 2021. She now had a consulting arrangement with Dr. Ashford. She also had 4 years of access to my complete medical history before she left. I set the photograph face down. I need written confirmation today that no records have been released to any third party in the past 60 days. Howard wrote it without asking why. He had the confirmation by end of day. I spent the rest of Sunday the way anyone watching from the outside would describe as a man enjoying a quiet afternoon at a hotel. I read in the lobby. Took a slow walk around the block. Had an early dinner. But the whole time I was doing something else entirely, building the second list. The one nobody could see. What they knew versus what they didn't. By the time I got back to my room that evening, the second column was considerably longer than the first. Monday at 8:04 a.m. Gloria filed. At 8:17, she called me. I was already in a cab heading to her office. "It's done," she said. 2 words. I closed my eyes for exactly 1 second. The Caldwell Trust restructuring was on record. My position as sole trustee formally documented, the asset inventory sealed. If Patrick filed Wednesday, he was filing into a wall, and everything he submitted would sit on record right alongside everything Howard had assembled. Tuesday, I reviewed every document one more time, not because I needed to. Thoroughness isn't a mood, it's a discipline. Tuesday evening, Russell from hotel security delivered an envelope to my room. Printed stills from the lobby camera, Patrick and a man I confirmed as Stephen Merritt standing near the concierge station, Tuesday evening. Timestamp visible in the corner of each frame. Patrick on his phone, the look on his face exactly the way Owen had described it. I added the stills to the file. Wednesday, I dressed like I was going to a regular dinner. Nothing more. I've never believed in dressing for intimidation. That's a rookie move. It puts people on defense, and defensive people are unpredictable. I dressed for the same reason I always dress well. Because I respect the situation, even when the situation is ugly. I sent the invitation myself on Monday afternoon. A short note to Lorraine, handwritten, delivered by courier to her house. Told her I was extending my stay through Wednesday, that I'd love to have dinner before I left, that she should bring Patrick. Said there was something I wanted to discuss as a family. She texted back within the hour. Of course, looking forward to it. I read that twice. Thought about the relief she must have felt reading my note. Her father reaching out, wanting a family dinner. Perfectly timed from her perspective. I try not to think too hard about what that says, but sometimes it finds me anyway. They arrived at 7:03 p.m. Patrick and his good watch, the one Lorraine bought him for their anniversary, worn with the particular confidence of a man who needs his wealth to announce itself before he does. Lorraine in a dress that cost what it cost and a smile she was working harder on than she knew. Gloria and Howard were already seated when I brought them in. I watched Patrick's eyes find them, register them, file them under unknown variable. His smile held but tightened, maybe 10%, enough for me to notice. Lorraine hugged me at the door. She smelled like the perfume I gave her 2 Christmases ago. I hugged her back. We sat. Wine was poured. I gave Patrick about 30 seconds of comfortable. Then I put my hand flat on the table and said, "Let's skip dinner for a few minutes. There's something I need to cover first." Lorraine tilted her head, that particular look she has, the one that's been the same since she was 9 years old. Curious, slightly indulgent. Dad being formal again. "Of course," she said. "What's on your mind?" I looked at her directly, not at Patrick, not at Gloria, at Lorraine. "I know about the petition," I said. "I know about Dunbar and Mercer. I know about Dr. Ashford and what you paid him. I know about Dr. Carolyn Brewer and the dinner at the restaurant on Thursday. I know about the hotel room, the override access, and the $3,500 that went from Patrick's account to Martin Prescott in 2 installments. I paused. And I know about the $380,000. The table went quiet in a specific way, not the silence of people who are surprised. The silence of people whose footing has disappeared and haven't decided how to fall. Patrick's face ran through 4 or 5 expressions in rapid sequence, none of them completing before the next one started. Lorraine went completely still. Patrick found his voice first. "Edward, I think there's been a muss-order. The trust restructuring was filed Monday morning at 8:04 a.m., I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. My position as sole trustee is on record. The asset inventory is sealed. Russell Kenmore at this hotel has independently filed a police report naming Martin Prescott, and the detective handling it has a direct financial link between Prescott's account and yours." I looked at Patrick calmly. "Please don't use the word misunderstanding." He closed his mouth. I turned back to Lorraine. This was the part I'd thought about the most. Not the evidence. Not the strategy. Just my daughter's face across a table, and the distance between what she did and who she actually is. "I'm not going to pretend I understand how you got here," I said. "But I was never the confused old man you needed me to be for this to work. I never was. And I think somewhere along the way, you knew that and kept going anyway. That's the part I'll be sitting with for a while." She didn't say anything. Her hands were very still in her lap. Gloria slid the agreement across the table. One page. Clean. Voluntary withdrawal of any current or future legal challenge to the Caldwell Trust, my position as trustee, and my legal competency. In exchange, no criminal charges pursued by me for the hotel access, the fraudulent petition, or the attempted procurement of medical records. It's fair, Lorraine, I said. Considerably more fair than what you had planned for me. She read it slowly, then she picked up the pen and signed. Patrick signed after her with the efficiency of a man cutting losses. Gloria countersigned as witness. Then Howard. They didn't stay for dinner. I ate alone. Steak, bread, a glass of burgundy that Margaret would have had strong opinions about. I always miss her opinions. The hard drive sat in my jacket pocket, scratch at the 7 o'clock position, exactly where it belonged. 4 days later, Lorraine called. Her voice was different. Not the composed version from Wednesday, something older and more honest underneath it. She said Patrick had convinced her I needed help, that the trust would become unmanageable, that they were doing it for me. She heard herself say it and stopped. I know that's not. She stopped again. There were moments when I looked at what we were doing and I kept going anyway. I don't have an explanation that covers that. I didn't make it easy. But I didn't make it impossible either. We're not fine, I told her, but I'm not done with you. She exhaled like she'd been holding that breath since Wednesday. Neil flew in from Portland the following weekend. We had dinner, just dinner, nothing heavy. He told me he'd planted the oak tree in the backyard with me when he was 7. I'd genuinely forgotten that. The tree's been there so long it just became part of the yard, part of the house, part of everything that was there when I got up in the morning. That's how it is with some things. You stop noticing them until someone reminds you, and then they settle somewhere permanent. Dr. Peter Ashford's 11 cases are now under review by the medical board. Howard found 2 of those families. Both of them had suspected the testimony used against their relatives wasn't straight. Neither knew they could push back. They know now. I went home on a Friday. Alan Fairbanks held the door before I reached it. 19 years at that building, he knows my car by sound. Beverly had left fresh flowers in the entry hall. I went to my office, sat down, opened the laptop, and found the file I'd started the night I came home from the Alderton, the one that begins phase 2. There was one blank line at the bottom. I'd left it there on purpose. Wasn't ready to fill it until I knew what I actually wanted from whatever Lorraine and I were going to build out of what was left. I typed it slowly, something honest, something that lasts. Closed the laptop. Outside, the oak tree was moving in the late afternoon wind. Neil planted it when he was 7. Margaret watched him from the kitchen window. I was probably on a job site somewhere, missing it entirely, the way I missed more than I should have in those years. But the tree's still there. 38 years in the same ground, same roots, not going anywhere. Some things don't need protecting, they just hold. They mistook my silence for weakness, and that mistake cost them everything they thought they were about to take. Edward didn't raise his voice once. He didn't have to. If that hit different, you already know why. Share it. Subscribe. See you next week.